Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and it is time once again for Monday Morning Murph, the first Monday Morning Murph show breaking down a loss this season as the Minnesota Vikings dropped to 5-1 after losing late to the Detroit Lions. So Murph, you were in the house yesterday at US Bank Stadium. Quite the atmosphere there. The fans were jacked up. I was tracking the decibel levels, which reached ever so slightly higher than the Texans game, but did not matter so much to Mr. Jared Goff, who stood in there time after time and completed big passes against the Vikings. I want you to give me your big picture takeaway, and then we will break it down item by item. So how did you walk out of that building yesterday?
I walked out superbly entertained. I walked out reminding myself why it's sometimes good to be inside stadiums to kind of get a feel for the energy and the vibe. And as we talked about leading up to the week, and I've been kind of contemplating since, I can't remember a Vikings Lions game with stakes that high, emotions that high, matchups that close. And when you come away looking at the statistics were so almost identical from a total yardage standpoint, running game, quarterback play, turnovers, penalties. It was as an evenly matched game as you could have hoped for in mid-October. There were things to nitpick for the Vikings, things to nitpick for the Lions. I think what ultimately made the difference was this is a battle-tested Lions team that has already arrived, whereas the Vikings are ascending. And you had a veteran quarterback, Jared Goff, who's playing at the highest level probably that he has his entire career, at least statistically. And he walked into that cauldron of chaos, and he wasn't going to be rattled, maybe as C.J. Stroud was a month ago. And that's, I think, the difference. I think it was Goff made more plays. The Lions' high-octane offense made just a little bit more key plays than the Vikings' vaunted defense. And what you got was a wildly entertaining 2-point game that I don't think really changes the trajectories of either team. If anything, it really sets up that Week 18 matchup at Ford Field as really maybe the most anticipated game on the Vikings schedule from here on out, not sleeping on the Packers, of course, but I just feel like these do look like the two best teams still in the NFC North and arguably in the NFC.
Yeah, I think in the NFC for sure. But going back to Jared Goff and what he did to the Vikings for a minute, was your takeaway that Goff did a tremendous job and their offense did a tremendous job, or that the Vikings were to blame for not covering, not getting home, not playing the same level of defense? Because I think that there's definitely, with a team like this, a chicken and egg type of effect. The players in the locker room pinned it on themselves. They said we just didn't make the plays. And I thought it was interesting that Cam Bynum said that nothing that the Lions threw out there really shocked them. They just didn't execute. And they had 0 pass breakups outside of a defensive tackle. I mean, they did get pressures from Jonathan Grenard, but the blitzes really didn't get home. The coverage wasn't really on point in this game, but at the same time, they have an elite receiver, a top-notch quarterback, one of the best running backs that I've seen in person in Jahmyr Gibbs as he continued to just annihilate this defense. But how did you kind of divvy that up as you were watching?
I'd answer yes and yes. I think the Lions outplayed the Vikings, and I think the Vikings left too many plays on the field defensively. And both things can be true. There were times, and I think that's where a veteran quarterback makes the ultimate difference. And let's not sleep on the Lions' offensive line, one of the best in the NFL, and they were without a starter as well, but experienced, tough. You know, in some ways, the Vikings were manhandled at the line of scrimmage defensively, and that extra split second where the edge rush didn't get there, that extra split second where Jared Goff, with alligator blood in his veins, is going to stand in the pocket and deliver a strike either underneath or downfield as somebody gets open. I think that was the margin of difference. Could the Vikings have played tighter coverage? Yes. Cam Bynum, I'm sure, wants that tackle back, that open field missed tackle on Gibbs. But boy, let's not forget that Gibbs is also a burner who who made a nice move, and that's what he's paid to do too. So it really was just a really evenly played game. There were mistakes. I mean, the Vikings committed a lot of penalties again, and they've been doing that all season, but so did the Lions. You could argue that, without Dan Campbell being insanely aggressive on the first series and attempting a fake punt at his own 33-yard line, maybe the Lions win this game handily, as opposed to it being as close as it was. If you really want to boil it down, it really comes to that period in the second quarter and early into the third when Detroit's offense really did dominate. I mean, they had 4 touchdown drives that really carved up the Vikings defense. I mean, there were a lot of big plays in the running game, short passing downfield, third down conversions. That's what kept the Vikings backpedaling. I was impressed how they came back out of halftime, and with Sam Darnold, they didn't curl up in a ball when they were down 21-10 or 28-17. They made a huge play on defense to actually get themselves into the lead again. But again, I think the margin of victory was you had a battle-tested veteran quarterback who did just a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think with Brian Flores, it's tough because if you are a guy who has a certain type of scheme and mentality, you don't want to completely go away from that with your defense when you are facing any given team, right? Like you want to do the best thing that you do against the other team that's very good. But in the case of the Blitz, it was not effective at all. In fact, Steve Palazzolo, formerly of PFF, tweeted out that Goff went 14 for 16 with something like 159 yards passing when the Vikings blitzed. It seemed like they picked it up so well. He picked it up so well and knew exactly where to go with the football. And they did get to Goff more than he usually gets sacked, but they didn't, I don't think, pressure him time and time again. And he understood exactly where the short passes were. That was also schemed up extremely well. And I think what the Vikings believed was, okay, they're going to have to use their running back in pass protection. And they said, no, that's okay. We'll run some receivers in pass protection at times, or we'll just leave a free runner and leave it to Jared Goff and leak out Jahmyr Gibbs. And on a number of occasions, and I believe this happened on the last drive where they said, we're going to send some pressure, we'll force Gibbs to stay in. And the Lions went, no, that's okay. We'll just leak him out and give him the football, and he'll run for 16 yards and make a huge play that ultimately got them in field goal position at the end of the game. It was a matter of the quarterback, the offensive line, the play caller. But I don't know that I really want to second guess Brian Flores sending blitzes because this team is built on an aggressive mindset to do that. And, at one point, Jared Goff fumbles, the ball bounces back to him, and you sort of wonder, would it have been different if this happened or that happened on a couple of plays? But I think the Lions just understand how this works with the Vikings defense, and we've seen it now work how many times in a row when Jared Goff has played against the Brian Flores defense. They crushed them last year, and then I said leading up to the game, well, look, it's a different personnel this time around, but schematically it wasn't all that different, which meant that it was the same results from them. So I don't know if I really want to question that because I also want Brian Flores to keep playing this way. I don't think that there are many teams that are going to be able to handle it as well as Detroit did.
Right, and it's not always just the pressure that Flores brings, it's the threat of the pressure that makes an opponent not panic, but at least adjust on the fly at the line of scrimmage or put a shred of doubt into the quarterback, into the opposing offensive coordinator's mind about what may be coming, and disguising coverages and sneaking, Andrew Van Ginkel back into coverage so he can intercept that 95-mile-an-hour fastball from 6 feet away and take it in for a score. That opportunity didn't really present itself yesterday. The chess match was great, and it was a great buildup to it. I think both of these guys are, polishing their resumes for a head coaching job next season, and maybe, redefining what it means to value and evaluate, if you will, an offensive or defensive coordinator. It may be time to overpay one of these two guys to keep them in place, even though both, I think, have aspirations to be head coaches, certainly for Flores again, too. It was just a fun game to watch. It was a fun, interesting, because there were plenty of big mistakes, big plays, big momentum swings. It wasn't really a pretty game by any means. Certainly in the first half, again, a lot of penalties, but it was, kind of two heavyweights just throwing haymakers at each other, and the Lions connected on a couple more. And, it would have been really fascinating to see if the Vikings didn't get penalized on that very, very last play, if, Will Reichert would have gone out there and attempted a 65 and change yard field goal, I have no doubt that he would have made it in that situation. And boy, what would we be talking about this morning? It should not be forgotten that he's had a phenomenal rookie season, and that's going to come in so handy. I mean, when you can just bomb 57-yarders as if they're 30-yarders without even a blink of the eye, that's going to bode well down the road. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Week 18 rematch. Interesting stat, I think it was from the AP last night. So these teams have been playing each other since 1961, and it's been completely lopsided. 80 wins out of 126 games for the Vikings, a .635 winning percentage. To put that into perspective in baseball terms, to have a .635 winning percentage, you'd have to win 103 games in a regular season. That means you're a monster team. So it's completely been one-sided. That said, for the first time since JFK was in the White House, the Lions have won 4 straight in the series. So I'm not saying it's totally flipped, but in this short window, it's the Lions' world in the NFC North right now. Everybody's got to come get them.
Hang on. Let me silence my phone real quick so I can tell you that Us Days at US Cellular is back again. Exclusive offers just for customers, just to say thanks. Right now, you'll get $1,200 off any phone plus $400 off any tablet. Amazing, right? But my family is so excited about their new devices, they keep texting me during the show. They're all about Us Days deals like $1,200 off any phone, $400 off any tablet. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com for details. Well, I think the same thing is this was a game to decide who we believe the best team in the NFC is. And it is the Detroit Lions, and the Vikings are still second. I would say I'm impressed by what Green Bay was able to do against the Houston Texans. They pulled out a late victory there, and they really slowed down CJ Stroud. So they actually have a defense now, which was not the case in the last couple of seasons. And then you go through the rest of the NFC and you go, Philly, I guess. I mean, the way that San Francisco lost, Brandon Ayuk got hurt. Looks like he's going to be out for the year. That team has just had so many injuries. Seattle is still kind of hovering around, but I'm not sure how scary they are because they seem to be kind of a boomer bust on a weekly basis. These are the teams, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings, who have been the most consistently excellent, and they were largely consistently excellent against each other yesterday, as you mentioned, that really close box score. But I do want to go back to the end of the game because my big overall takeaway is what a game. You won't forget that one if you were there with how exciting it was, but also that after Kevin O'Connell was talking about the sort of self-inflicted things that they did that caused them to lose. And when we go back toward the very end of the game and you look at that sequence where if they get 4 yards on third down, the game might end up being over. There's just over 4 minutes there, maybe one more first down. Sprint out to the right. Darnold overthrows Justin Jefferson. Looked like Jefferson was open, but also may have been some confusion with Jordan Addison. I think that was also a difference in this game, Murph, is that there were just these small things that ended up adding up. And maybe this is also because we talk about the Vikings all the time, that we're paying more close attention. And on Detroit's side, they would have their own complaints. But is it play call there? Is it execution? Is it once again trusting Sam Darnold in a spot where you maybe should have just handed the ball to Aaron Jones? But that sequence really stuck out to me because over the last couple of years, there's just been, with O'Connell in charge, too many times where you can put a team away and they let the team still exist. And I felt like that happened in Green Bay. I felt like that happened with the Jets. And I think the last couple of weeks we were saying, if you keep playing with fire, someone is going to burn you. And the Detroit Lions are the type of team that is going to burn you when you give them that extra chance.
Oh, I agree. There's a pattern there. And, O'Connell's been paying a lot of lip service to it, but it's one thing to say we're going to look inward and clean it up. Well, you've been saying that for 6-7 weeks now. And again, the penalties, a lot of penalties, a lot of holding penalties, and you can justify some holding penalties to keep your quarterback alive. But there's a lot of sloppy, just grabbing instead of blocking. The pre-snap penalties. There was a play, I can't remember when exactly it was, where Darnold just spiked the ball. I mean, essentially, that's just, let's get out of this. It's a mess. You mentioned that, they had a chance with 4+ minutes left to put the game away. Darnold rolls out and he overthrows Justin Jefferson. And yes, that would have picked up a first down. It keeps the option alive to run out the clock. Now, Jared Goff, the way he's been playing, he would have made that completion just because of the way he's been playing. So I'm not going to put this on Sam Darnold, because actually I was quite impressed with how he responded in the second half. Because lest anyone forget, this is the first time the Vikings have actually trailed for any meaningful minutes in any game since the early moments of Week 1 against New York in the Meadowlands, when they were down 3-0. I mean, they were down 21-10. They were down 28-17. The clock was ticking. It was an opportunity to see how they would actually respond, and I liked how they responded. But if you think you're going to say Sam Darnold, go out there and outplay Jared Goff and win us this game, you're overreaching. At least 6 games into the Darnold experiment. Maybe toward the end of the season, with a little bit more of a track record, maybe you can say that. Maybe in Week 18, he does have to go out and outplay Jared Goff. But right now, that's not his job. It was the defense's job and Brian Flores' job to outplay and out-scheme Ben Johnson and the Lions offense. And that didn't happen. So all that said, yes, I think there are issues that O'Connell needs to address. And these are on him as the head coach, because it's a top down. And now they got a short week to prepare, which, for the Rams on Thursday, which is good and bad in some ways. They can, they always say, let's flush this and get right back at it. Doesn't necessarily allow you a lot of time to drill on fundamentals if that is an ongoing issue. But again, another learning opportunity. How are they going to respond to a defeat? Playing Thursday night is never easy. Playing on the road Thursday night is never easy. Traveling west to play on the road on Thursday night is never easy. And it's easy to look beyond and say, well, you got the mini bye, because the schedule from here on out is pretty marshmallow soft beyond the division matchups. So again, another opportunity to see how the Vikings respond to a tough but admirable defeat. But yes, penalties and confusion, unforced errors need to be addressed, because those are going to plague you at the worst possible times than it did yesterday.
No, this is a great point. And as we grow on a sample size now of Kevin O'Connell, we've got 2.5 years, or almost 2.5 years, of him coaching football. And in all of those, the pre-snap stuff, the calls not getting in, having to burn timeouts when it looks like, why are they calling a timeout right now? And the answer is just because the call's not in, or somebody's not lined up correctly, or there's not the right number of players on the field. And I would have to look across the league to see how it compares to other teams throwing away their timeouts, but it feels like it's too many. And in a big game like this, it is too many. You can't have any of those things. You can't have a wide receiver lining up not on the line of scrimmage, which happened. And I don't know if that's coaching or just the player not checking with the referee, or the referee being nitpicky. I don't know. But when it comes to delay of games and things like that, they just seem to happen way too often. There were another couple sequences too that were frustrating when you look back at the game, where they get into scoring territory call. It wasn't quite the red zone, but they're on Detroit's side of the field, and they've got a chance down 28-20 to potentially score a touchdown there and maybe tie the game. And they run out a trick play to start the on first down. And this is another 3-year thing. There hasn't been a single trick play that Kevin O'Connell has used in his entire time coaching the Minnesota Vikings that has worked. And I thought that they had disappeared after Ty Chandler looked like he was going to throw a pass a couple of weeks ago in a game that all they needed was a field goal to put away. And they wanted to do something crazy risky. At that point in the game, Darnold had just hit a 51-yard pass and then scrambled for a first down, or there was a penalty that gave them a first down, but it was a good scramble. And then you're running a wide receiver pass. I just cannot wrap my head around that. And then the next two plays are a little bit out of phase. Something isn't quite right. Darnold ends up bailing from the pocket, tries to scramble twice, gets taken down, and they have to kick the field goal. I think that when we talk about the little things and we talk about having this now analysis through a championship type of lens, I mean, one is just, can I beg strongly enough not to run any more trick plays? But also just a feel for the game thing. Sometimes I just go, do we have horse blinders on and we're just calling plays here? Because a trick play under a certain circumstance would make sense. Your quarterback just hit a bomb. The guy's been rolling. Why are you putting the ball in the hands of your receiver to throw it there? And then the quarterback comes back in because the play failed. Now you got to pass twice. And it just threw everything off there. I didn't really understand that. And that's the kind of minuscule feel for the game stuff that we talk about. Running a pass play to Aaron Jones against Green Bay that ends up getting picked off. There's just been one of these each week that, again, kind of came back to bite him here.
Yeah, I mean, feel for the game. That's a great way to put it. You're right. I think it was Naylor that he hit at midfield, like practically on his goal line. I mean, that was a rocket throw at a key moment. Now the building's rocking. You're feeling good about yourselves. Why are you trying? If you're trying to go for the jugular, do it legitimately, because not only that, but you're also, you put the ball in Jefferson's hands to try to make a pass. He's not a quarterback. And when the play broke down, he literally panicked. And now you've got a panicked wide receiver with the ball in his hands, who, by the way, if I'm correct about NFL rules, is not afforded the same protections as a quarterback. He's in the middle of the field running around trying to look for somebody to throw the ball to, about to get murdered or make a monumental mistake. Don't put Jefferson in that kind of position. Trick plays are great if you're down 2 touchdowns and you're not getting anything going and you want to spark something. How about we just have a universal rule? If you want to try out the trick plays, do it in garbage time when you got a 20-point lead. Never mind the feelings of the opposing team. If you really want to work on these things and you want to perfect these things, do it when the risk is low. But if the risk is high, you're right. All it did was just ground that potential scoring drive down to the nub. And it reeks of, I'm the smartest guy in the room and I'm going to outsmart Dan Campbell and the Lions right here because I suddenly found them vulnerable. Well, Kevin O'Connell, you don't have any playoff victories. You don't have, you're not knocking on the Super Bowl door yet as a head coach. I don't think you're in a position to really be that aggressive. And by the way, if you want any lessons on insanely aggressive mistakes, just look across the field at Campbell. Now, he can afford to do that because of the cachet he has. But if the Vikings won that game yesterday, he might be getting barbecued for the fake punt. Now, I know it's in the Lions' DNA to zig when everybody thinks they should zag. But how about that for a lesson in humility? And how about just taking that with a grain of salt? Look, if you're committing 12 penalties a game, half of them pre-snap, half of burning your timeouts because you can't get plays in on time, I don't know if you should be reaching into the bags of tricks. I think you should just clean up what you should be doing fundamentally. Save the trick plays for when you're desperate for momentum and points, or when you've got your boot on the throat of an opponent and you can actually figure out if these things are going to work or not. Again, never mind their feelings.
I also think that if you're good at them, you can do them. If there was any sort of track record,
right.
and with Detroit, this is where I would defend the fake punt. And I didn't like it. I don't think that's the point in the game or on the field to do that, because you're just giving points to the other team if it fails. The Vikings, I'm sure, were prepared for the trick play from Detroit because they've done it so often. But where I would defend it is that they often work for that team. They ran a reverse flea flicker thing that went for a whatever number yard gain against the Dallas Cowboys to Sam Laporta down the sideline. And they've had a bunch of them over the years, the fake punts, the reverses, all sorts of stuff where they've come up with explosive plays. The Vikings don't have that track record. And also, when you have, just can't say enough, when you have Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson having good days, just lean on them. And they did to some extent at times throughout the game, but I still didn't think that the ball got to number 18 as much as it potentially could have. And in a situation like that, you have first down, you're in scoring position, Aaron Jones is on your football team, just use him. And he was already playing 75% of the snaps or whatever it was anyway. So you might as well just give him the ball. And I think at the end of the day, he ends up with 6.5 yards per carry. I have a tough time thinking that it's not a good idea to give him the football in that type of situation. And that's a small thing, but it ends up making potentially a difference in the game. So those are the things that I feel like when we get to bigger games, when we get to the week 17 and week 18, I don't know that we're going to see progress because they've just happened over and over again. The kind of feel for the play calling and stuff like that, keeping teams around in games. But I'm curious to see if it is different at some point or if those things come back to haunt them. Just on Darnold.
Just, dust them off in Jacksonville or Tennessee.
Yeah, right. That's when you use your trick play, or maybe just put them in the box and shoot it to the sun. How about that? But when it comes to Darnold, I thought it was interesting to see people debating Sam Darnold's performance because overall, when you look at the stat line, it's tremendous. I thought that he did a pretty good job of decision making, finding open guys underneath, laying it up for grabs when he was supposed to. But there's the big miscue of the interception. There's the big miss on 3rd and 4. And I was struggling to kind of evaluate his game because I liked the game plan for the most part. And I liked the underneath passing and I liked getting the ball to Addison and Jefferson a little bit more, but I still need to see way more Jordan Addison. And I also wonder how much TJ Hawkinson would have made that game differently. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Well, yeah, TJ Hawkinson is going to dramatically change, I think, the Vikings offense. I mean, I think it's going to, give them obviously another offensive tool and weapon, but it's going to keep a defense keeping an eye on another superstar player, which could open up more opportunities for Jefferson and Naylor, hands down. And really, Darnold just has not been able to enjoy that escape valve and that Pro Bowl talent. So, yeah, no question. That can only help. I like the fact that Darnold, the expectations are rising for Darnold, and you're now like, okay, well, you need to make that 3rd down and 4 completion with 4 minutes left to Jefferson because that's what elite quarterbacks do, and you're on a 5-0 team, and that puts you in a position to end the game. He misfired. On the interception, I can't remember who was open on the left. There was somebody wide open clearly.
Jones.
Yeah, I mean, down there, that would have been a huge play. As soon as the ball came out of his hands, you saw the Lions safety break, and you just thought either it's going to go over his head or it's going to be an interception. And you can almost smell it coming. Darnold didn't smell it coming. So, that's a play. And those are 2 throws that one he doesn't need to make and make a better decision, and the other one that he needs to complete. But his accuracy was excellent. He found Jefferson in the end zone. The play to Naylor, again, the arm strength is there. He actually showed some mobility at times, too, that, again, is a little sneaky. But what are your expectations for Sam Darnold after 6 games? 6 weeks ago, we would have not put him in the statistical or leadership category that he clearly is in with the Vikings, which only begs the question, where is his ceiling? And what should we expect his ceiling to be? I think it should be a little bit higher, but it's not Jared Goff's ceiling. And you can't really go out there and expect Sam Darnold to outplay Jared Goff, to outplay, the elite, a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen. Not that they face them, but I'm just saying you can't say Sam Darnold needs to match these guys or outplay them. Sam Darnold needs to do just enough to get the ball to Jefferson, not make any mistakes, continue to progress, increase his confidence, and then increase the coaching staff's confidence in how much to unleash him. So it's still baby steps here. And I think people may be getting a little bit greedy. All of that said, those are 2 throws he needs to either not make or make better.
Yeah, I think there's always a difference between when we look back at the game and saying this really mattered. And with those 2 throws, those really mattered to versus the bigger picture, the bigger statement on Sam Darnold, and even the bigger statement on that game. Overall, there are going to be, I'm sure when we go back on tape, there are going to be throws, that was there or that wasn't there. There was one on 3rd and 17 where he actually had Jefferson open on a play that looked like it was designed to go there, and he ends up checking it short. But I'm not too upset with that if he's checking it short and protecting the football, because last week or 2 weeks ago, we criticized him for 3rd and 15, whipping it down the field and throwing an interception. So he kind of can't have it both ways. But he game managed, I thought, very well in this game, and he pushed the ball down the field. There was a 33-yarder to Naylor. The 51-yarder was actually to Addison. I just checked that. I thought it was, but still explosive plays to his wide receivers, the long touchdown down the sideline. This is what you're looking for from Sam Darnold. But I think that we all know that the complete team is going to have to show up week in and week out in order for them to win. And if they're going to beat a good team like Detroit, you can't have your defense mostly run off the field. You're just not going to win too many of those games when that happens. You need to have the defense play like they did in the first half of Green Bay or most of the game against the Jets or against the Texans. That's just how it's going to have to go if they're going to end up winning the conference or winning the division. And I think we know that. But what percentage of games would this football team win if Sam Darnold plays like that? I want to say like 90%, that they would, if Sam Darnold just plays like that they would win 90% of their games against the rest of the NFL. It's just that in the 10% is the presumptive NFC favorite to go to the Super Bowl because their roster is super duper stacked. Just that last thing, Murph, because it is a quick turnaround. Your thoughts on the Vikings having to get into a little Airbus and go across the country, myself included. I'm not on their Airbus, but I'll fly out there as well for this football game. I kind of can't wait to turn this around really quickly. Yesterday made me want more football, so I'll get that. But nervous or confident? Which side of that would you be?
Oh, I feel pretty confident. I don't think the Rams are really that much of a threat. I think what's really going to challenge the Vikings is, as you mentioned, the logistics of it all. Although they are coming off a bye and they've already gone to London. So, LA isn't Thailand. I mean, it's only 3.5 hours away. And the Rams are also on a quick turnaround as well. So, or did they have a bye yesterday? I could be wrong.
Sort of both. I mean, they played the
Thursday?
Raiders.
Oh,
they played
okay.
the Raiders, so you could say
right,
it was
right. So they didn't
was
really
a bit
play
of a bye. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was about as easy of a team as ever to play.
I just feel like, the Vikings have their own issues to clean up. They may not have a lot of time to do that. But the flip side is, if you're coming off a loss that you feel like you should have in a game, you feel like you should have won, it's always better to just get right back on the horse. And again, these aren't the 2021 Rams or the 2020 version of the Rams. I mean, this is kind of a backpedaling version. Sean McVay's a great coach. I wouldn't sleep on him, but it's not the worst opponent to face on a quick turnaround. So I don't feel terribly, worrisome that they're going to overlook the Rams. Are just in a bad position right now. And look, I think it was interesting just to watch from the team standpoint, O'Connell's standpoint, and Darnold's standpoint, how they played from behind. And I thought they played fairly well from behind. Didn't ultimately win, but the way Detroit was playing and the momentum that they had, especially the way the defense was really getting steamrolled, that game could have gotten ugly quickly. And they came up with a big play at the end to take a fleeting lead. And we didn't even get into the 2-point conversion or whatnot. But all being said, I thought they afforded themselves pretty well in an unfamiliar territory of playing from behind. So I think they're in a pretty good position going out on a short week, regardless of West Coast or not. And then keep an eye on whether or not Hawkinson is going to come back, or they feel like a mini bye will help them more and they can bring him back November 3rd, I guess, is their next home game after that.
will be very interesting to watch. Does Cam Akers get more work with Aaron Jones having to do so much to be on the field against Detroit? Does Hawkinson come back? Do we see a new right guard? Because it was another very difficult day for the much maligned right guard yesterday. A lot of pressure up the middle. So there will be some just general roster things to keep an eye on here. Who do they elevate? Who do they not elevate? The way I look at it is you should be much more on the confident side, way, way more on the confident side, especially because the Rams don't block very well. But if they don't beat the Rams, then we will raise maybe more questions about this team. But I'm not ready to do that after a extremely close loss to a tremendous football team. Brian Murphy's great to see in the press box yesterday. Murph, I usually don't see you dressed up. It's only golf gear that I ever usually see in, and not covering a game for a while at the stadium, but great to have you there. And as always, great to pod. We're going to stick to our Monday schedule though. So Thursday night, Dane and I will do the pod from inside the stadium, and then it'll still be Monday morning, Murph, with you then. So thanks for your time, and I look forward to that conversation.
All right. Don't get too crazy on the Sunset Strip.
Oh, yeah. It's a big concern. All right. We'll see you.